Up next on Way of the Renaissance Man, the tables are turned as Jim moves from host to guest. Have you ever wondered how Jim became the Renaissance Man? In this illuminating interview with John Paul Mendoza and Gabe Batista for their Position to Win podcast that originally aired March 12, 2020, Jim reveals his personal history, including his educational and professional background. More importantly, you'll learn about Jim's approach to life, why he does so many different things, how he focuses on the ideas he loves, how he integrates those ideas and translates them into action, and how he then celebrates those integrated ideas in action. If you've ever wanted to find out what makes this Renaissance man tick, then this special reprise interview with Jim is geared just for you. And now, here's Jim's reprise interview with John Paul Mendoza and Gabe Batista of the Position to Win podcast.
Yeah, well, and we have a special, we have a special treat because we're in a secluded location, hidden from the black helicopters and everything. And we have our very first guest in Position to Win podcast, because we typically do these. And we have a close encounter with a Renaissance man. In fact, the one and only Jim Woods. I've known Jim for a few years now and met him at Freedom Fest, so he's one of those. And but Jim has got some really amazing history, and he's going to share some insights with us today. And all I can say is, Jim, welcome to Position to Win podcast.
Thank you very much, John. Blackjack 21, episode 21.
I know. That's it.
We're on now. You know I had to come in.
I know.
I wouldn't miss that opportunity to beat the house.
That's it. You get paid 3-2, man.
Exactly, man. Yeah. Now you're making me want to go back to Vegas and do what you used to do.
No, I always carry a deck of cards, Jim. It's a friendly game.
Okay, well, then, I always carry a lot of money, so let's do it.
Podcast is over.
See you guys next time.
That was good, Jim. Yeah. Anyway, I'll just give Jim a quick little background about Jim. Jim can wrap up more of this, but so Jim has done so many variety of things, and he's such an intriguing guy, and we'll see what we can get out of him today. But a guy who was at one time was a bodybuilder. I mean, like serious ass bodybuilder. Philosophy major. Wrote for what was it again?
I've written for my professional career has been a writer, primarily writing and advising in the financial investing area.
Right.
So I worked for Investors Business Daily. I started my career there as the newspaper, and cut my teeth there. And then I actually worked for an investment bank. I worked for Morgan Stanley.
I think I've heard of those guys.
Yeah, you've heard of those guys. And I actually worked in the World Trade Center.
Wow.
In late 90s.
Wow.
And then I was but I still maintained in that industry. I didn't do a lot of writing at Morgan, but I learned some pretty good investment banking skills there. Met a lot of high level people. Translated that later into to financial journalism world, and then eventually into the newsletter writing area where that's been my professional focus for the last 15, 16 years or so. And it all led up to me having now 4 different newsletters with the pretty much the biggest financial newsletter publishing company out there. So I've been very very fortunate in my career to make some good decisions and meet some good people.
Well, and Jim, in the midst of all that, because I mean that's all impressive, but the midst of all that is that Jim has put together what he calls he's the Renaissance man. So tell us about this whole Renaissance man concept, because that's what's that all about? Where did that come from?
Sure. What you're referring to in terms of my professional, my side gig, as it were, my pet project, my passion project.
Better than Uber, right?
Yeah. Fortunately, don't have to drive an Uber yet, but you never know. The stock market these last couple of days have been pretty tough, so the best of us might be doing that at some point. But hey, there's nothing wrong with a gig economy.
Right.
No, but the project that I started last year, and I think you were there for the initial launch of it, actually. So I launched it coming up now 2 years ago at the Freedom Fest conference.
Mm-hmm.
It's a project I call the Way of the Renaissance Man podcast and lifestyle website. Mm-hmm. So what it is how it came about is, I've always enjoyed doing a lot of different things. And I love, to me, like, my curiosity level is far greater than the hours in my lifetime. So I want to just do stuff, I want to learn stuff. Yeah. I want to actually learn stuff and then apply that knowledge. So with that mindset, I've always wanted to do a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I said, well, there's something I want to do. I'm just going to try it.
Okay.
I don't care if I suck at it. I don't care if it's something that turns out to be not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it costs X amount of dollars to get good. I'm going to try it. If I want to do it, I'm going to try it. And more times than not, I've come away with a beautiful experience that has taught me a ton of stuff. And I've incorporated that into my life and into the rest of the business activities that I do. And it's always been a cause of some sort for celebration in life. So I always wanted to do stuff I always wanted to do a lot of stuff, because anything I wanted to do, I just said, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go for it. Why not? What's the worst that can happen? I don't like it. And I even if I didn't like it, I didn't waste any time. Yeah. Because I learned something about myself. Okay. So that got me to thinking, well, if I can do this stuff and incorporate a lot of different things into my life, why can't everyone else? Mm-hmm. Why can't people just go for it, do what they want to do, and try things? So the concept of the Way of the Renaissance Man happened because when I was in college, I actually had the same kind of mindset. Even in high school, I had the same kind of mindset. I like to do a lot of different things. I play music, I play sports, I work out, I compete in bodybuilding, like you mentioned, martial arts. I studied philosophy in college. I did a lot of things. I read, I write, and I do a lot of things that maybe are different focuses. I'm not just in the field of athletics or whatever, but I know a lot about that. I'm not just in the investment world, but I know a lot about that. Mm-hmm. So I got this moniker, this nickname called the Renaissance Man. Jim's a Renaissance Man. That was my name in college, my nickname in college. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that. There was, not a lot of people in college age called the Renaissance Man, right? Nice, so I wore that positioning proudly, And I always knew that one day I wanted to do something with it, mm-hmm. but I didn't know how to go about it, And then when the whole podcast, website, kind of blog kind of thing came around, I thought, what? I think there's a market for this. I think there's there's people that want to find out the tools needed to really focus on how to do these things, mm-hmm. and how and why, how it happens, why it happens, and also just have fun. Yeah. Learn some good stuff, have fun doing it, and really just kind of the old saying from that movie, Dead Poet Society, suck the marrow out of life. That's what the Way of the Renaissance Man wants to do. Wants to suck the marrow out of life.
That's a good line. It's a good movie.
It's a great movie. It's a great line. It's a very good sense of life in that movie. I like it a lot. The end was a little bit troubling, but that's how life is sometimes. That's how life is, exactly. Bittersweet like that. Yeah. But guess what? You know that going into this thing. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know anybody who hasn't had their heart broken many times. I know. And the older you get, the more you had that shit hurt, right? Yeah. So why not live every second?
You have to.
As much as you can, and as hard as you can. There's no second takes in this shit. You got to just do it.
There is no practice to life.
That's right.
There's only
Yes,
living.
yeah, so that's my philosophy with this website and lifestyle podcast, and we do that by talking to a lot of interesting people, yourselves included. And I've had philosophers on the show, psychologists, writers, artists, businessmen, investors. I've had professional skeptics. I've had all kinds of different people.
I like that. But I want to be a professional.
Yes,
skeptic.
yeah.
I'm already an unprofessional skeptic.
Exactly. I'm an aspiring skeptic, you know.
I mean, does that change that you can't go into the Olympics if you become a professional skeptic? No, can't go to the
Exactly.
Olympics,
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. You got to win the gold medal. Actually, the person I'm speaking of his name is Michael Shermer, and he's the founder of the Skeptic Society.
Wow.
He takes a kind of a scientific based approach to all kinds of nonsensical claims and
Well, is he skeptic about science as well?
he's skeptic about he's skeptic about scientific claims that don't pass muster.
Sure.
He's not skeptical about the scientific process that leads you there,
Sure.
because that's all we have.
All right.
Sure.
But if somebody says,
that's-
"Hey, the Earth's flat," well, that's a scientific claim.
Sure.
You better come correct with some evidence, and of course, there's none.
Sure.
And I'm going to piss off all your
Hold-
flat
hold-
earthers.
Hold on, Jim. Hold on. No. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
So-
I don't quite know how many flat earthers we have out there.
Well, you guys better know your customer better than what the hell.
Well, knowledge seeps everywhere, so you never know. Yeah. Well, that's great. And one of the things that I found really interesting is when you say that, how do you help? I would say, how do you help open somebody's mind to the possible? Maybe that's what you're doing, is opening the mind to the possible.
That's that's actually quite a good analysis of what some of the what the reason is. I want people to know that there is a huge world of possibilities out there, and with the internet and with podcasts and with interesting people, you get to go to the website and you can discover all this stuff. Good shortcuts on how to do stuff. Good ideas and reason why you need to be happy or how to be happy. Things like that. I've had a lot of different people on the show that I kind of pull out what kind of makes them tick, and so people can pick and choose what they want to. But it's all about the possibilities. It's all about, I'm not talking to anybody that hasn't achieved a lot in life.
Right.
I'm talking to people like yourselves, like high achievers, people that have something that they've done that you can learn from. So why not learn from them?
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
So how did you go from being the bodybuilder, the Renaissance philosopher in college to the world of investing? That's an interesting pivot. How did
Okay, that's
and then also how intentional that was. I want to hear.
Okay,
about this.
good. I'm glad you asked that, because and this is a good story, and it also encompasses one of the principles that I espouse in life. Okay, so after I got out of college, I went into the military. Because I always wanted to do that, and I always wanted to do some high speed stuff. I want to jump out of planes and shoot people, and so I did. I was in the in the military, and I did that for a couple of years, active duty, and then another.
That's a place where you can do it legally, right?
Yes, you don't get thrown into.
Crap,
Exactly.
I can't just do this.
Exactly.
All right, I guess I'm signing up for this program.
Uncle Sam trains good killers. So I was able to do that, and it was fun. But it's one of those jobs where you actually it's more fun to tell people you did it, and it's the actual reality of it is not that fun.
Sure.
Fortunately, I didn't actually have to shoot anybody for real.
Yeah.
So that was something that I'm actually grateful for.
But you did jump out of airplane.
But you shot it. Yeah, exactly. No, I did all that, and you ran, and you humped a rucksack with 90 pounds of ammo and gear in it for 15, 20 miles, and got yelled at, and slept outside for several months, and all the good stuff that you don't want to ever do again, but was fun to tell people about. So after that, I came back, and I was looking for trying to start my career, and actually it was funny because I was on
And you were like, okay, so here's my resume. I can bodybuild. I know about Aristotle, and I can shoot people and jump out of airplanes. What do you have for me?
Yeah, exactly. There wasn't very many like philosopher,
really?
bodybuilder, killers out there. Like I didn't see any
Man.
for help wanted ads for that. So.
I've got in my mind you sitting there in a cubicle, and there's a woman who's got the sweater draped over her shoulders, the glasses with the big gold chain hanging on there, and she's like checking off the list, going, "Okay, yeah, let's figure out where this guy's going to
Exactly,
go."
exactly.
And carefully, she starts moving her foot slowly to tap the security button. And I see that.
That did happen a couple of times, yes.
Okay.
So you're not far off from that idea. Well, so but in all seriousness, when I came back from the military, I was looking for a career, because I also wanted to I was also a musician. I was pursuing that as a hobby slash career, and I was serious about it. It was I was in bands and I did a lot of things. This was like mid '90s in Los Angeles, and so I did that with full vigor. But that's not you also have to have a main gig to fund your to fund that gig. You got to have
I know that all too well.
Yeah, you got to have they don't pay you like right off the bat to go play shows like that. But I also knew that I wanted to do something important, something meaningful. So I was looking for the best job I could find. And I knew that I had some writing skills because I was always a good writer. And I knew like about free market economics and economics from my studying in school. And so I applied for a job at this newspaper called Investors Business Daily. And I went there and I had an interview and people were like, that's interesting. Like you have an interesting background. You did this and that. Good, degree from UCLA and you present yourself. They're like, okay, well, we assume, of course, that you know a lot about the markets. This is a financial market newsletter or newspaper. And I just paused for a second. I said, well, of course, I've been investing for a long time. I know a lot about the markets. I studied them extensively in school. Yeah. Like, oh, that's great. Well, okay, let's say, can you start at the end of the month? And I'm like, yes, thank you for giving me a shot. I'll start at the end of the month. Wow. And this is about 2 weeks or so. I had about 2 weeks before I could start. So in that 2 week period.
How hard could it be?
I learned, I went from of course, I knew nothing about the markets. So I went from knowing virtually nothing about the markets to becoming like a mini expert in 2 weeks because I just went balls deep into every book I could find about the market. Okay, in a 2 week period, I must have read
that
like
deep, huh?
I must have read like 8 books, right? Yeah. So and then when people started asking questions about the markets and stuff, I was like, oh, I know how that works like this, that works like that. Oh, this is like this, like. And they were like, wow, you really do know a lot about the markets, don't you? And I said, well, yeah, I guess so. I guess I did.
It's fresh. It's fresh.
Yeah,
it's fresh.
It's like you just read about this yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So the wider thing is like, if you want to find out about something and you have enough motivation, you can do it.
It's true.
If you're motivated enough, if you have the discipline, if you have the interest. See, I didn't really know that much about markets because I never grew up with a family that that was investing. Yeah. My father was a very smart man. He's a petroleum engineer, and he knew a lot about engineering petroleum, and he knew actually you would have liked him because he's a sales guy, and he also knew about the technical stuff. So he did very well. He in his industry he was a well-known guy. But he never invested. He never really thought of. I mean, and considering back then, in the 70s, 80s, the stock market was for the rich people anyway. It wasn't as pedestrian as it is now. Now anybody can invest, and everybody should invest. Yeah. But back then it was, you had to have like a broker. You couldn't make online trades back then. There was no such thing as that kind of stuff.
No online. No E-Trader.
No E-Trade until like the 90s. Oh, wow. So, but the interesting thing is though, I found out that I discovered that it's one of the greatest industries for someone like me, someone who's really interested in a lot of different things, because I get to monitor the entire world. I get to I get every day I read about all kinds of stuff, and I'm knowledgeable about how if one decision is made in China, whether that is going to impact the certain sector of the markets, or one monetary policy decision in Europe is going to affect a certain number of companies here, why that's going to do it, what that's going to do there. But it's so everything's so interconnected and everything's so like well-rounded that for someone who's interested in a lot of different things, someone who's a Renaissance man, it's a great field to be in because you get to explore. It's like with you guys, your work. You guys get to consult with a lot of different companies, so you see a lot of different people. You're not just pigeonholed into one thing.
Right.
And that's at one of the, so if anybody out there is interested in the markets and financial stuff, I recommend going into it, because it'll get you exposed to a lot of different things.
Well, and I think one of the things that's really interesting is that Jim spends a lot of time, and you've talked about this and how you read and you really dive in and do that. I know Gabe and so that was one of the things that really was interesting, because I've been telling people forever to read this book or read that book or read this book, and they wouldn't do it, or they would do it and they would tell me they did, but they didn't actually do it. And Gabe started, and I having this conversations and getting, on the same wavelength. And he was like the first guy I've met for years who would actually book for book. Oh yeah, I read this one. Did you read this? Did you read this?
I love that.
And that kind of intensity and that kind of drive and motivation is so powerful. So, what would you say is for somebody who's just out there who's got to think about, because you obviously have developed and put together this position, whether you consciously did it or whatever, but you now have this position, and you were sharing with me, and I don't want to embarrass you, but you're sharing with me that you're very highly rated in the world of investment advisors and newsletter writers. And so what would you say to somebody just in general? What should they read? What were the 3 books that Jim would say you got to read? Well, I mean, we already know that the first book should be the Most Businesses Fail.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. You just took the words out of my mouth.
But what books?
Okay, all right.
Books
so
would you say?
I'm heavily influenced by the work of Ayn Rand, the philosopher and novelist. Yeah. I think that if you could only read 2 books in the world, the first one would be Atlas Shrugged, and the second one would be The Fountainhead.
Interesting.
Okay.
So those are my two must reads in this world before you perish. And then another book that you can read that is for beautiful philosophy is the Stoic books, like Marcus Aurelius. Meditations. The Meditations is another one that I love. I mean, there's so many books that I could go on, like in terms of like just a list of like great works of literature. Anything from Victor Hugo, anything from Hemingway, anything from.
I think I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, anything from Steinbeck. I mean, they don't necessarily have my same philosophic perspective.
Sure.
But they make you think, and that is what is key in the world. Make you think.
Yeah.
Because if the only tool of survival we have is our minds.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you do not challenge your mind with ideas that you agree with and that you don't agree with, you are never going to expand your mind. You're never going to be a better person than you were the day before unless you challenge your assumptions, unless you challenge your attitudes, unless you do stuff that you suck at. I always tell people this. Like, they're like, okay, you do a lot of things, Jim. How did you get good at all these things? Well, I started out by being bad at all those things. And then I kind of learned how to do them. And then in the process of learning, the love of the learning of the process.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Made me good at those things.
But that's I think it's almost like a third thing. So it's not about the thing, but it's about the process of the thing, which is different, right? It's essentially different. I remember I used to tell my piano students back in the day. I asked them, "Do you think you come here to learn the piano?" And they would look at me puzzled, like, "Well, yeah,
of course,
that's why I'm here, right?" I said, "No, you don't come here to learn the piano. You come here to learn how to learn the piano, which is not the same thing, right? So yeah, I appreciate that the kind of love of the process. Now, you obviously a deep thinker and a philosopher, and you that's kind of close to your heart, right? And did you find that that kind of perspective or that kind of attitude towards, perhaps that's what it is, attitude towards knowledge, helped you in your investing, or did you kind of have to merge it because well you were there, so you had to kind of do it, or was it did you were there aspects that were natural to you, or how did
I
that
mean,
work?
yeah, no, that's a great question. It was definitely the former. Like it's a natural kind of like love of understanding the deeper layer
How things
of
are put together.
what's going on. So, for example, this translates into my work to these days. So, I have a free e-letter
Okay.
for that's oriented toward investing, but it's not just investing. I call it the deep woods
Oh, okay. I see what
because
you did there. I see what you
yes,
did there.
now the deep woods is because I want to peel back the onion skin on all these different issues, whether it's politics, current politics, whether it's philosophy, whether it's fitness, whether it's nutrition, whether it's, of course, a lot of investing stuff because this is a adjunct to my investing newsletters.
Okay.
So I talk about a lot about the economy. I talk a lot about the markets in this publication, but it's not just all about that. It's about the ideas that are underneath
Yeah.
that are motivating it. Like, for example, one of the topics that came up recently is so we're here in March, and up for the last couple of months, it's been a very big surge in the Democratic race for president.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders is doing very well.
Very well.
You know, he and Joe Biden at this point are the two front runners
Yeah.
for the nomination. And people ask me like, well, why do you think Bernie Sanders is so popular? You know, I mean, he's obviously like he doesn't seem like the kind of candidate that would be like perfect for the presidency and whatnot. And in order to understand that, you have to peel down the layers of like what he's saying.
Yeah.
So he's speaking to people in moral terms. He's saying it's not right for people to have that much money. It's not right for people to do this. It's wrong for billionaires to have this much. Now I happen to disagree 100% with that idea.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I hate that idea. I think it's just it's super counterproductive to any kind of rational human being existing. However, humans want to be taught in moral terms what's right and
What is
wrong.
right and wrong.
And nobody else is saying things like that. So it should not be a surprise that he is resonating with a big part of the audience.
Sure.
Now, you can have bad ideas and still know how to resonate.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
I mean, the
we-
dictatorships in the world.
We've had a
you,
few of those.
You know, yeah, you come
had
from
a few of
you
those.
come from South America.
Yeah.
That is a area that's replete with with a lot of people that want to follow a demagogue.
Yep.
Okay, the whole world's been like that until basically the Enlightenment. So the point being is, I like to go underneath the peel back the onion skins and look at things from that perspective, and that applies to investing as well. And one of the reasons why I think I've been pretty successful is I've been able to explain these things, the motivation of these things, for my readers
That's interesting.
without just saying, okay, here's where the market is. Here's your price
see.
earnings
Yeah.
ratio. Here's this, here's that. Anybody can do that. You know, why is there a trend developing in this sector? Why is there a trend developing in the wider economy? Why is gold a good buy right now? It's not just because its price is trending up. It's because there's something underneath that people feel fearful about the confidence level in the entire machinery of the monetary policy of the world. And so gold's a good option for that if you want to be, so it's that kind of attitude of looking at it.
yeah.
So, and that's, I actually recommend that kind of way of cultivating that mindset for any industry you're in,
Sure.
because you can know the nuts and bolts about how to sell something the way you do, John, but you also know the underlying things that make people buy.
Exactly.
The psychological premises,
I would
philosophical.
even go a couple of steps above. In the case of John, he feels what people need or
Exactly.
trying to is crazy, like because it's very organic, right? And then he has a lot of experience training, so but it was so natural that he's had to translate all those kinds of instinctual things to ground. But yeah, it's exactly it. Is what is behind what's behind
Exactly.
that, and then maybe that's more solid. That is more to bring it back to the Renaissance and to philosophy. The philosophy of sales, so to speak, right?
Right.
The philosophy of whatever, the
Very,
philosophy of
that's
investing.
that's
and that,
exactly true. Yeah,
right?
that's, yeah. I mean, I think that is there's actually a lot of work being done right now in behavioral economics,
Yeah.
and that field's one of the most burgeoning fields in that wider genre
Yeah,
of discipline,
absolutely.
because people want to understand why people make
Oh yeah.
decisions. Because if you know why people make decisions, then you can find out
Sure.
how to provide those sell them to give them. And of course, what they found is that people don't really make rational decisions based on the calculation
Yeah,
of
of
X,
course
Y,
not.
and Z. It's an emotional decision.
And anybody who's had a boyfriend or girlfriend knows that for a fact,
Exactly.
right? Before Daniel Kahneman comes and tells us what's going on.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
like, hey man, I already knew that
Yeah,
part.
I already knew this girl drove me crazy, and I don't even know why. And she's gonna break my heart. I know that's gonna happen, but I'm gonna go into it anyway,
Oh
right?
man, yeah, yeah.
I mean, we've all been there, right?
Absolutely.
So I mean, and so that's kind of the underlying motivating premise behind like the Deep Woods publication, but also the Way of the Renaissance Man and all my work, because the deeper you get down,
In the woods.
the more the deeper into the woods, the more sustainable the knowledge.
Yep, yep, yeah.
Right.
The more you're in that ground, that
Exactly.
solid rock,
That
that
solid rock,
foundation.
the foundation, which is why I studied philosophy in college. It's why I recommend people read philosophic novels like Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, because it's not just a story about a inventor. It's a story about what motivates the world.
Yeah.
So
So how hard is it for somebody to, whatever they're doing right now, because we have obviously a business oriented audience and they're thinking about positioning. So how hard is it for somebody to really get that in depth knowledge, which is what you're talking about? So and let me frame it a little bit. One of the things that we talk a lot about is that first off, you need to know yourself. I see where philosophy could help us there.
Oh yeah.
You need to know your customers. And we kind of covered that. But to me, it's really important to know the landscape. To know, so now we have the Renaissance map, if you will.
Yes.
To really know who all these people are. So maybe you can talk about how in your mind, because you've kind of mapped out this very interesting and I would use the word eclectic life that you've lived and that you continue to live. So talk about how you would do that from your perspective, because you're analyzing companies every day. So I mean, so we're consulting with them, but you're up here and you're watching what they're putting out, right? So they're trying to back you up to the sunshine pump, and they're telling you how everything is going to be wonderful, and
Exactly.
the red line is beating, the blue line is beating the red line, and all of that. But tell me how so how do we get that help for people about how they can understand that in a way?
yeah, that's a great question. I think, okay, so first of all, an eclectic life is something that I think is the good life, and I definitely strive for that type of mindset. So I wear that with pride, and I think the way I see it is, if you're someone who is a business person and you want to either get to the pinnacle of your area of expertise or your kind of field, it is something you guys talk about and that I really like. And it's like a lot of people, want to be unique, like you've said.
Right.
But not very many people are comfortable with being a different person.
Wow, I've heard of that before.
Okay. Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about your work that I really admire is you give that message to people. Because another word for being different is being eclectic. That's a nice way of saying it almost.
Sure. Yeah.
So
You could say to somebody, man, that guy's weird, right? Or you could say, that guy's eclectic.
Yes.
You know, that's
yes.
good.
That's a sophisticated terminology for being a weirdo.
You mean weird?
Yeah. So I mean, and I think you should not be afraid to be a weirdo because guess what?
Yeah.
Nobody that's ever how many people do you remember that are like just a company man, status quo guy?
True.
Nobody remembers that person.
Absolutely true.
It's the person like a Steve Jobs, an eclectic guy that's willing to challenge the status quo. Now, whenever people use these kind of examples, it's not very. To me, it's not like your success or failure in life is not did I measure up to being a Steve Jobs, but maybe you could be a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
And see things just a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And how do you see things different? Well, the way to see things different is you have to have a lot of different perspectives that you take in.
Right.
So you got to read stuff, you got to challenge stuff, you got to do things that you suck at. You got to. One of the good stories about having a constant challenge to yourself is most people listening now probably know who Ray Dalio is.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. Billionaire,
billionaire,
of,
Bridgewater Associates. Mm-hmm. So they have their company set up so that like almost like an adversarial everybody's ideas are under fire by everyone else there.
Yeah.
So somebody brings an and the Bridgewater is a money management firm, a hedge fund, if you will, and they manage billions of dollars.
Aren't they the biggest?
They are the biggest.
Right.
So, and the reason they got that way is because they made a lot of good decisions.
Yeah.
But how did they make good decisions? Just because they got lucky? No. Because when somebody brings an investment idea to the table, the rest of the 50 really smart people that work there just slaughter it. They pick it apart. They just tear it to pieces. And everyone knows that that's going to happen to everybody's ideas. But guess what? The ideas that survive are badass, kick-ass ideas that survive that gauntlet. Mm-hmm. Okay,
right.
So you guys do the same thing with your consulting work. You look at somebody's like, positioning and say, well, hey, it's shit. You might not say it like that, but you might say it like that.
Yeah.
But guess what? You just saved that person 3 years of heartache.
I'm telling you, and that's
and so maybe it was brutal, like to say that to people, but. Like, I mean, I love when somebody tells me, hey, something you're doing is not working. Mm-hmm. At first, of course, you get like a little sensitive to it. Like, and because it's you, and you put your heart into something. And most people that have a business, they work their ass off. Yeah. They put their heart into it, It's not like they're just playing around.
Sure.
Okay. But
it's their life.
It's their life, and they're putting it their all into. Most people really work hard.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of screw-offs up there, but they're usually company people. They're not entrepreneurs.
Right.
If you're an entrepreneur,
you better work.
Yeah, if you don't want to work, then you better get your ass out of the entrepreneurial business because I don't care. People go, oh, you work from home. That's great. Yeah, and I say, yeah, I get to work whatever 80, 90 hours a week I want.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
because Jim only works part-time.
That's because exactly. I don't work like John does.
He's a part-timer.
Exactly. I got to have all that other time for all my pursuits.
He just coasted there, man.
Well, the thing about working though is
gotta love it.
You gotta love it. Plus, I don't even consider it work.
Yeah.
Like it's just what I do.
It's true.
I like people say, oh well, what are you? When are you planning on retiring? You're like, I mean, I'm not in retirement age at anywhere close to that at this point, but I just said I'm not. What does that mean?
What do I do?
Like I'm gonna keep doing everything I like to do until I can't do it anymore, and that's when I'm dead. Okay, because I want to do stuff. How much stuff? There's so much stuff out there. Like there's not enough years. If I could live to be 300 years old, I still wouldn't do half the shit I want to do. Okay, and that's part of it. An intellectual curiosity, like a kind of a vibrance for life. Like you don't have to be someone who just is stuck pigeonholed into one little corner. Now. When you're positioning your business, of course, you want to define that.
Sure, but you can expand it. You just have to be smart about it.
Yeah, you have to be smart about it. But you also have to. But you also need to if you have a defined position with your business, then that allows you the freedom to expand it out.
That's true.
Because
exactly right.
because you got that core thing. It's like that guy Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL, is also a really good author and very good podcast. He said he calls it discipline equals freedom. because you got the discipline of your positioning, but then you have the freedom to do all the stuff that supports that positioning.
Yeah, totally.
But some people get off discipline on their positioning or off discipline on their investing, or they start doing this. Like,
that's
I'm a value investor, but I want to trade over here.
But Tesla's going crazy. Let's
exactly.
get on it.
Exactly. That's a great example, or Bitcoin. Oh, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. Well, but really, I really rather have like a solid earning company. Well, I mean, which are you? Are you a trader, or are you and you need to define your kind of philosophy. Now you can do both, but you have to put it in different buckets.
Right.
You can't use the same money. You can't sell your Johnson and Johnson and buy Bitcoin.
Oh man, Jim!
You got to have your. I told you not to do that, Gabe.
I was an e-trader this morning. Man,
well, here's the old funny part about it. Here's the old adage. You have people, and this is what we always call it. You have people that, if they make a good trade, they're like, hey, I'm a momentum investor. But if the stock goes down and loses a bunch, like, oh, hey, I'm a long-term investor. I'm going to hold that. So
I'm right either way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm right either way. And that's a problem too, because you're not right either way. You need to constantly reassess whether you're doing it. I do that with the. That's one reason why I like talking to you guys. Because I know that if I want to build my brand or my positioning, that I need consulting from good people. I need okay, how do I get to the next level? I'm always thinking about that.
Yeah.
How do I build this tribe of Renaissance men that I want to do? Because I think it'd be a cool thing to have a big tribe of Renaissance men. So that's what I'm trying to figure out the best way to do. I mean, the key, of course, is good content, but the other key, there's a lot of positioning things that I could be doing. I know my competitors, but I also know that there's some competitors out there that I don't really know. And like you've said before, the do nothing is also your big competitor too. Like say, well, hey, that's a lot of work. I mean, I don't read these books and and study this stuff and put a lot of time in. I'd rather just play video games.
Sure. Well, and a big part of it though is being willing to take what we call the sharp edge of marketing, which is to say and disqualify people to say, listen, if you're not going to be willing to read, 6 to 12 or 24 books a year,
right,
then you're probably not going to be in the Renaissance. We got a different program for you, which is the Slacker program.
Yeah, we got the remedial program for you.
We got the hammock to sell you, and we got that, and we have the Spanish version because Gabe's teaching me Spanish. We call it the Mañana version.
The Mañana version.
There you go. But a lot of people opt for the Mañana version in life.
Yeah, Mañana man.
Yes, exactly. That's a really that's a profound statement, though, if you think about it, because everybody thinks, I just do this later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. There is no fucking tomorrow.
That assumes you have tomorrow.
There is no.
And that's a big
exactly
assumption.
Exactly. Yeah. You have no guarantee of the next minute.
Yep.
Okay. So why mess around? I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, and people have said that before. I'm not the first person who's ever said that, and I won't be the last person that ever said that. But it doesn't make it not true.
Yeah.
And people need to be reminded of that, because I know a lot of people, they're stuck in their job, they're stuck in their kind of relationship, maybe they want it. I know a lot of people that want to be writers. People write me all the time, say, oh, how did you become a writer? How did you do that? How did you do this? I wrote.
I started writing.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
That sounds like I got to get that down. I wrote.
That's right. Exactly.
That's a short book, but it's a good.
Well, I'll tell you what.
And I'm only making fun of it because of the fact that
it needs it.
Whenever
it's so simple.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whenever people ask me, because I do my weekly Monday Speed Start Monday, and I just did number 808, and people say, well, why did you do that? And I said, because I was at a National Speakers Association, which I say derisively is like a bad 12-step program. It's just, for me it was. I mean, first off, it's just a bunch of people talking about how they can't talk. And what I would say to them is, look, I built a platform. I started doing this, and at times it was almost nobody listening, and at other times it isn't. But now when we go in, right, so we go in, I'm the analog guy, Gabe's the digital guy, and they say, well, so why should we pick you? And I said, well, look, can you find somebody who has done 808 hours of talking about how to sell and advocate and do that? So you find the guy who's done 809 hours, hire him or hire us.
Right.
And because there's nobody behind me. And the point of that is that, when I first started doing coaching, people would tell me they'd feel bad because they weren't, as successful as somebody else. And it just really started to piss me off. And I didn't go to coach you or coach this or coach that. So I have a real simple way to help everybody who's listening. And that is, see, at one point in time, so what you do is you find out from Forbes who's the richest guy. And at that point in time, the richest guy was Bill Gates. And all you got to do is think of it this way. Here's the visual for everybody. Because people think about, I want to visualize. Here it is. We're all in one big giant line. And we're all staring at Bill Gates' ass. That's that's what it's all about, okay? So and it isn't a good-looking ass as far as I can tell. But
I haven't really noticed, John. But yeah, thanks. I'll take your word for it.
No, yeah, you can Google that.
Well, he hasn't ever competed in bodybuilding. We know that.
But the point of it is that people get into these kind of mental states and they don't just do. So if you want to go do something like I've done for 808 of them, you go out and you start doing it. If you want to start writing, you start writing. In my case, if you want to write a book, take 30 years, get yourself a Colombian, you got a book right there.
Exactly. There you go.
How hard can that be?
That's right.
There's a lot of Colombians. There could be a lot more books.
Well, here's one real like life thing that happened to me. So a friend of mine wanted to be a writer and kept on asking me, like, how do you get into it? How do you write? How do you become a writer? This and that. And I'd tell him some of the stuff that we've been talking about already, but he'd keep asking me, like, from time to time, how can I do this? How can I do that?
Well, tell me for real this time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, really? You're not giving me the secret.
Yeah.
Like I was holding
You
it.
were holding it back, yeah.
So I finally just told him, I said, look, you want to be a writer? It's like, yeah, I really do. I said, go right now, go to Target or Walmart or whatever, get yourself a yellow legal pad and some fucking pencils and start writing. Cost you about $5. But he never did that.
Yep.
And it pissed me off after a while. Of course I lost touch with him, because I wasn't joking with him. I said, sit your ass in the chair and bleed.
Yeah.
Okay, but he wasn't willing to do that.
Somebody famous said that.
Yes,
he probably stopped off, bought the pork rinds.
That was our friend Ernest.
Yeah. We should probably.
I'll give him props.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the point is, like, if you've done, John, like you've done, Gabe, you get out there and you do it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's only because life is not a spectator sport. You got to get out there and do it. And if you have the right position, you're going to succeed with it, or you're going to definitely increase your chances. Sure. If you don't have that, and you just say, well, I'll just do X, Y, and Z, and I'll throw up some, spackle on the wall and see how it looks. It's going to look like shit. Okay. Right. You need to focus. Here's the three principles that go along with the way of the Renaissance man.
Okay.
I call it focus, integration, celebration. So focusing your mind on what matters and on whatever task you're doing and whatever means something to you, and that's different for everybody. Integrating what you learned with your life, how to actually put ideas into action. And then the byproduct of that is you get to celebrate it. What's more important than that?
Well, that's a great way to end it.
Thank you for listening to this reprise interview of Jim Woods from the Position to Win podcast, originally aired March 12th, 2020. For more great resources and inspiration, please visit the website at wayoftherenaissanceman.com.